On today's show, we complete our list of top 10 Sens prospects in the summer of 2024.
And we have the debate, is the Sens decor better now than it was last season?
I don't think we see eye to eye on this one. That and more on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. You can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter. You can find us everywhere you get podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Friday, July 19th, and Pilsy, you promised I wouldn't lead the show with Rourke Chartier, but I know there's some super fans that are sad. Rourke Chartier signed in the KHL with the Chinese-based Kunlun Red Star.
Hey, throw me in that crowd that are disappointed that Rourke Chartier has to go all the way to China to get some work and ply his trade of being a defensive centerman. I thought the Sens might bring him back, especially Jacques Martin. I thought would have kind of put in a big word for him to try to keep him around. He's a good fringe NHLer. You know, you don't want him playing all 82 NHL games, but he also is kind of a better fourth line center than he is a top 6 AHL center. So he's kind of in a weird spot, but glad for Rourke hopefully getting the bag in China. Wow.
37 NHL games last year for Rourke Chartier. Basically was the Shane Pinto replacement, as he missed almost half the season.
Or a Dylan Gambrell replacement. I feel like those two dudes are very similar.
Yes, that's fair. So there's the lead on today's show here.
All right, I'm glad we led with that.
Well, what, you want to lead with how absence is making
Whoa,
the Sens
did you
decor
just say
worse?
Don't say Eric Brandstrom on this show, Ross.
Okay. Well, tell me why the Sens decor is either better or worse then.
We're not talking about Eric Brandstrom on this show. Well, I just think it's interesting because I think there's people that are really far on one side that say, yes, it is better. People that are really far on the other side saying, no, it's not better.
That's so unlike humans.
There's people that are in the middle where I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. I realize those are the three options.
Just sitting right on the fence, eh, Pills?
Well, no, I'm more on the fence of no, it's not better, but it depends how you look at this, right? Like, let's do the one for one. Chychrun is arguably a better defenseman than Nick Jensen. I feel like that's fair to say.
He's a much better offenseman than Nick Jensen, but how much worse is he defensively than Nick Jensen?
Exactly. That's what you got to get into. But I feel like if you just put them 1v1, most people are going to lean towards Chychrun being the better choice.
If you're drafting a fantasy draft of a team, not in terms of like, oh, we need offensive numbers. If you're drafting a team to win a championship, yes, most teams are going to take Jakob Chychrun.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think this decor has changed to fit a better fit. Like an analogy I thought of, Ross, you got a guy, he's a bachelor, he's got a sweet sports car. It's fast, it looks good, it's expensive, it's flashy. Everyone's like, damn, that's a nice car. Then he's a family man. He's got kids now. He's got a wife and kids. That coupe sports car, sure, it's cool, but is it going to work? So the Sens went from, all right, let's just get a garage full of flashy sports cars. And they're like, damn, this isn't working out for us. Now let's get some minivans. Let's get some versatilities, things that we actually need that are going to help us reach our goals more properly rather than just having that flash. And I think that's where you can look at Nick Jensen being brought in. And it's like, that's the type of defenseman we needed, even though necessarily he's not a better defenseman. So that's why I thought it was an interesting debate, Ross, because I think a lot of people too are of the mind where it's like, addition by subtraction, like shipping out Chychrun, shipping out Branny. Right there, a lot of people are like, I don't care who replaces them. We're better off because that just wasn't working. And that's a totally fair argument. Like those two players were not working in Ottawa. But did they get better or just different? That remains to be seen. Like we can discuss on paper, but will it work out better? Hopefully. And obviously, Linus Ullmark plays a huge, huge role in this team being a better team defensively. So I wanted to mostly stick to the decor on this debate.
I think the funniest part, and it was a great breakdown, but you went with minivans. You are a pickup truck driver. Like, isn't that kind of the ultimate versatility?
I mean, if you got a family with
you got 4 doors, don't you?
Yeah, but if you got more than 3 kids, unless you're doing hillbilly style where you get them sitting in the back there. Yeah, I mean, then you got a lot of versatility if we're looking at that. But yes, okay, even fair point. Maybe the minivan isn't right for you. Maybe you need the pickup truck. So Tyler Clevin, the pickup truck.
Well, it'd be nice to have one of those auto parkades, just like the one right next to the CTC, where you can pick and choose a little bit of everything. And maybe that's what the Sens are trying to do, because they're expecting Jake Sanderson to replace the offense of Jakob Chychrun. I know they were even pretty close last year, 41 to 38 points, but I think sky's the limit for Jake Sanderson. So how are you best going to insulate him so we don't have circa 2011 Erik Karlsson's ready to break out, but Philip Kuba's holding them back on his left side, right? You need to have that perfect partnership on the back end. And Nick Jensen's played with great players in the past. He's a guy who I think is going to be able to steady things out. So I think it goes back to what Dave Poulin and Steve Staios have been preaching, which is they need the internal options, the core of this team, to just get a bit better and try to use these pieces as those complementary guys who are going to make less mistakes than maybe the ones who were there in those positions before.
Yeah, and that's fair. I get that argument. The one thing, Ross, though, where I think the argument that this decor is better now totally crumbles apart, in my opinion. One injury in the top 4.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but we talked about last week, I think it was last Friday, if not 2 Fridays. Yeah, it was last Friday, where it's like, who's left? Because the Sens should not be done. And there hasn't been much movement in the free agent market, the Kevin Shattenkirks of the world and so on and so forth, that you can still add a depth piece. And I think Ottawa needs to do that.
Yeah, I think they're just playing hardball, waiting till it gets closer to training camp. These veteran guys get desperate, and either you try to get a couple guys on PTO, see who you like, or you just say, we like this guy, let's just give him a 1-year cheap deal and see how it goes. So I don't think they're done just yet, but as of now, the decor is interesting, to say the least.
Did you see, speaking of defensemen, Jacob Bernard-Docker led all NHLers in goals from the right point this season?
With 3, yeah. Didn't we, weren't we calling that, was it Zaitsev or Zub that was scoring a bunch of goals? Yeah, we were calling that the Zaitsev zone a little while ago. So JBD learned from his mentor and is potting in pucks from the right corner. Jeez.
Well, it's just unbelievable because, yeah, sure, it's 3, dude, but look at the other side of the ice in that spot. It's William Nylander with 3 as well. So
that's the thing. You think some power play merchant would have 4 from that spot, but I guess it's fairly deep. Like the power play one-timer guys, they're in the Kucherov and Stamkos zones.
Yeah, exactly. And even Pasternak on the wall, and Leon Draisaitl's had got the lead on 2 different zones there. Pretty impressive, but
it's
listen to all the names.
That listen there's all the names. 3 goals from there. Like,
you hear the names we're ripping off here, and then Jacob Bernard-Docker just thrown right in the mix.
Yeah, true. I mean, Jacob Bernard-Docker, Drew Doughty, spot the difference.
Bo Horvat, Nick Suzuki, Philip Forsberg, Zach Hyman, Jordan Kyrou. Those are the names that are on this list with Jacob Bernard-Docker, but they're going to need, for them to be better, Jacob Bernard-Docker needs to be better. Mm-hmm. Heck, you could go, all the guys who were here last year need to be another step better than they were last season, and hopefully health is of the essence next season as well, because losing Zub to that broken jaw in November, December was just awful luck, and then
then Shabbat later on.
Right. So you never had your full complement of top 4. And when you did, you still had that we're all lefties problem, which is fixed now because you've got 2 lefties, 2 righties, very clear who's going to be in the top 4. We think we know who's going to be in the top 6, but everything earned, nothing given, which is why one of the players on our top 5 Sens prospects is just that. Still a prospect, but man, he's got a great shot of making the National Hockey League out of training camp this year. Who is that and who's on our top 5? What did you miss yesterday? We'll recap our 10 through 6 and get into why the top 5 are who they are. Next, you're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. I love summer baseball. Nothing like a good sunny day, going to the ballpark, getting a beer, getting a hot dog, and enjoying some baseball. In fact, I'm doing that this weekend. I'm going to Chicago, going to Wrigley Field, and I got my tickets on Game Time. Game Time makes MLB tickets even faster and easier to obtain, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I love the Game Time app because I've never been to Wrigley Field, not sure what's a good seat or what isn't. So I took a look at a bunch of different options with their views from your seat, and I picked the one I love the most.
Where'd you choose?
I'm in a third base territory. I wanted to have kind of a full view of the field from that side, hopefully catch a foul ball.
You going to touch the ivy?
That's on the outfield. So I wanted to see the ivy. That's the thing. I thought about going in the outfield because that's like the iconic spot. But then you're on top of the ivy. You don't really get to see it.
Okay.
So, and I wouldn't have thought of that, Ross, unless I had the views from your seat from Game Time.
Well, funny you say that because I'm actually using Game Time as well today, and they're coming to Ottawa soon too, the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. Nice. So it's not just sports. You can also get your comedy festival tickets at LeBreton Flats on August 9th and that weekend. So 10th, 11th. It's going to be an awesome show. I'm going to see Tom Segura tonight. It's going to be an absolute blast. And they're coming to Ottawa. So you can get all your summer tickets and sports over at Game Time.
That's why we love Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends at the GLEBE Central Pub. Go check out the GLEBE Central Pub at 779 Bank Street. Heck, if you're going to the Great Outdoor Comedy Festival in a couple weeks in Ottawa, what better way to have a few prior at the GLEBE Central Pub? It's great vibes, great people, and they make sure the atmosphere is to boot. They've got all sorts of events going on, whether it's deals on different foods. They've got their beer of the day, and every Saturday night, you can set your clock to it. Every Saturday night, live music at the GCP. Tuesday trivia served up, always a good time. And if you like golf, don't wait. Get your team into the golf tournament happening on September 28th. Saturday, September 28th. Get your information at GLEBECentralPub.com and head down and grab a pint at the GCP. Let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. Our good friends at the GLEBE Central Pub are located at 779 Bank Street, right in the heart of the Glebe. So head there, have a bite, have a pint, and have a great time at the GLEBE Central Pub. All right, Phil Z. So let us know in the comments, are the Senators' defensive team as a unit better than they were at the end of last season? And how much, if yes, is it because of the changes made at forward or, of course, in goal versus the actual players that we expect to make the team on opening night should Steve Staios say no more bets and not add anyone else to the mix here? I would think that's unlikely, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the Senators depth chart and how things have shaken out. More changes definitely made up front than on the back end, with only 3 new acquisitions in Jeremy Davies, Philip Roos, and of course, the aforementioned Nick Jensen. They're going to be more so looking for those internal growth options from Jorian Donovan and Tomas Hamara. Donovan was a part of our top 6 to 10 Sens prospects yesterday.
Yep, he led that list at number 6. So we're on to number 5 here.
Why don't we do a quick recap beforehand? We'll start at 10, and then you can read us up here, and of course people can go check out yesterday's episode for more detail.
Good call. So number 10, Gabriel Eliasson. Number 9, Tyler Boucher. Number 8, Oscar Pettersson. Number 7, Levi Merlainen. And number 6, Jorian Donovan.
We appreciate everybody in the comments, the disagreements, always respectful, but also just important so that we're not just parroting each other. I like that. And a lot of people are telling us they think Levi Merlainen is a better goalie prospect than Matt Sogaard. I found that very interesting. And a lot of people thinking we're sleeping on Levi. What'd you think of that, Pills?
I think it's interesting because like we talked about, when we're making this list, we're combining where the prospects are right now with where we think they can be in the future. If you're just looking at future potential, then I can understand the argument that Levi Merlainen should be ahead. He's got a lot more runway on the track. He played really well last season. He had a couple nice NHL starts under his belt as well. And he's a guy that has pro experience dominating in Liga, which is pretty impressive for a young goalie. So I get that argument, but I think just where they are right now, Matt Sogaard is still ahead. He has much more NHL experience. He has much more AHL experience. He was the number 1 goalie in the playoffs for the Belleville Senators, apart from that one start Merlainen got. So I see both sides, but I for me, it's clear Mads is still the number 1 goalie prospect.
And we'll get to why shortly, but coming in at number 5 on our summer 2024 top 5 Sens prospects is Stephen Halliday, the highest riser outside of Jorian Donovan. The transition from NCAA, where he put up nearly a point per game again in 2 seasons there, he was so consistent. He comes into the AHL, and I know he's not your typical 2 and done type college player. He's a couple of years older than that, more mature, but he was able to step in and not miss a beat in the American Hockey League. I think that's super impressive and a great sign that not only do we think he's going to be an NHLer, but Pillsy, there's no question this guy's a centerman. You know how you always hear those conversations? It's like, oh, will he be a centerman at the next level? Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Stephen Halliday belongs in the middle of the ice.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best spot for him, Ross. When you've got the size that he does at 22 years old, 6'3", 214 pounds, like he's going to be able to hang with the big boys in the AHL and hopefully one day in the NHL. This guy went from college to AHL with such a seamless transition. I can tell you, Ross, from watching Stephen Halliday live, he was one of the most dominant players on the ice. And even, like sometimes as a college kid coming into the pros, you're going to be a little shy. You don't necessarily know all the unwritten rules of pro hockey. You don't know all the guys. You don't know the hierarchy and the politics of what's going on the ice. Stephen Halliday got in there, and he's getting in the mix after every whistle. He's chirping guys. He's giving guys little nudges at the end. Like, he's not backing down. And for my money, he was the best player for Belleville in their playoff run here. Like, he was setting guys up when he was on the ice. It felt like the Sens had a chance to do something. He was scoring goals, even as you see from this picture. If you're watching on YouTube, 6 Selly at the CAA arena. So I just think his ability to transition from college to the AHL was so impressive that this guy's got such a bright future. And if he keeps working on his game the way we know he will, I think he's going to have a huge role in Belleville next year. And he could be knocking on the Ottawa Senators' door sooner than people think.
There's no better compliment than when the head coach says other players would come up to him and say, hey, can I play with Halliday? Can I play on his line? Because he makes the players around him better. And I'm stoked to see what Halliday looks like in training camp. His first training camp, Pillsy, right? The college kids don't get that opportunity. True. So talk about aging out of dev camp. We saw him not this year, but last year looking too good for dev camp.
Yep.
And then he went back again this year just to prove a point, or not. That's not why he went back, but he proved once again that he is too good for that prospect level. So this is the last time he's going to be on this list. I think he graduates to a, that Angus Crookshank territory where it's like ready to make the jump to be an everyday NHLer. So Stephen Halliday comes in at number 5 on our top 10 Sens prospects. All right, Pilsy, that brings us to number 4. Number 4, Zach Stapchuk. And I'm glad that these two are back-to-back because they could very well be your top 2 centermen in the American Hockey League this year with an average age of about 22. Zach Stapchuk got an NHL taste and was able to stay healthy, play a ton of games. This went about as well as a rookie season as I think you could have asked for a former second-round pick.
Yeah, it was a good season for Zach Stapchuk. So where I said Stephen Halliday seamlessly transitioned to the AHL, it took a Stapchuk a little bit of time. And that's why it's so impressive what Stephen Halliday did. Also, Halliday's a little older, so you got to give him that benefit of the doubt too, and a little bigger as well, although not much bigger. As Zach Stapchuk, 6'3", 205, so only an inch and about 10 pounds bigger. So Zach Stapchuk has that size as well, but it took a Stapchuk a little while to get used to the AHL, in my opinion. I mean, his first stretch of games, he had 1 2-point game, but really the first 10 games, he only had 3 points. So it took some time. But once he got there, he showed really good offense and defensive play. Like, he was a two-way center that was able to adjust his game. And then as the year went on, he was able to produce better offensively. So I think it's good that he got a taste of the NHL too, Ross. It gives players an understanding of where they need to be to get to that level. And I think that helped Zach as well. So this is a guy that I kind of view him as like, you got Shane Pinto, and a lesser version of that is Ridley Gregg, and a lesser version of that is Zach Stapchuk, right? Like, they all have kind of similar parts to their game, and
they all compete.
Yeah, that's a big part of why the three of those players are good. But I think that bodes well if you can kind of look at the progression that Greg and Pinto have had. If Zach Stapchuk can kind of follow in that path, I think he's on a good track.
18 goals in 75 AHL games between regular season and playoffs, 30 points, and just a solid look in the NHL. You could tell after the first handful of games, I think the schedule may have caught up to him a little bit. And we always see that, right? The first couple of games, it's a lot of adrenaline. It's a lot of just playing on instincts. And then, the grind of an NHL season, the adjustments, everything that goes into it. So we've seen this time and time again. It's nothing to be disappointed by. On the contrary, it should be a great sign that he's getting his feet wet and learning. Think about Drake Batherson's first 2 stints in the NHL where he put up 3 or 4 points in 20-odd games. It's a tough league, and I think next year you'll see a Stapchuk get another opportunity to prove himself there, but I think he should also look to really establish himself as a top 6 centerman in the American Hockey League. For now, he's at number 4 on our list of top 10 Sens prospects in the summer of 2024. Pilsy, is there a tier here? I want to say there almost is, but I might push it up one more spot.
Are you saying between like 6, 5, and 4 is a tier, or the next players are a tier?
The next 3 are a tier. Well, no, I think there's a clear-cut number 1.
Yep.
But I think there might be a podium. Like, I think the next 3 guys kind of stand in a different room or a bit elevated than this group. I would say from 4 to 9, I think could be pretty much interpreted at your will.
Yeah. I would say for me, 4 to 7 is its own tier. I don't know if I extend that tier all the way down to 8 and 9 or 10.
Yeah, I could be convinced of that.
Yeah, the top 3 players, they're so different in their own right. So I don't even know if they all fit in the same tier, to be honest. But
let's learn more about them next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need, but at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. So whether you got that flashy sports car, a minivan, or a pickup truck, you can keep it alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Check it out today, guys. eBay Motors.
All right, Philsy, just want to remind everyone to check out Locked On Senators on YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe. And while you are there, go check out the Locked On NHL Prospect Show, where Sebastian High went through the Senators system earlier this week. And then the fellas over at Locked On Fantasy Hockey also broke down the Senators' outlook for the 2024-2025 season. No surprise, Pilsy, but the latter really focused on Linus Ullmark being a big part of any potential success.
Yeah, which is totally fair. I'm banking on that as well. So
top 4 is over. We've got Zach Stapchuk in the 4-hole in our top 10 Sens prospects in the summer of 2024, which brings us to number 3 as a goalie-friendly show. Mad Sogaard comes in this spot. He had his best pro season. He was unbeatable at times during the regular season, put up not only the numbers, Pilsy, but the consistency that we were looking for from the year before. I think he took a huge step in the right direction to maturing in that respect.
yeah, I would agree. I would say this is his best season in Belleville for sure. 32 games, a 2.45 goals against, a .916 save percentage, 2 shutouts, 18-9-3 record. There's only one season where he played more AHL games. That was in 2021-22, and a little not as good goals against and not as good save percentage, and the record was not as good as well. So he improved on all of those aspects. Even he had 2 shutouts compared to none that season. So that's what you like to see.
His first 2 career AHL shutouts.
Oh, wow. True. I would have thought he got one when he came in hot with 7 straight wins coming in from Denmark, but I guess not. Where I think a lot of people struggle when we're looking at Mad Sogaard versus Levi Merilainen is seeing that he's been in Belleville, and each of those years he's played in Ottawa as well. And unfortunately for him, his time in Ottawa hasn't gone great for him, but unfair circumstances where he was kind of the default goalie just because of all the injuries happening, and maybe he wasn't necessarily ready, and that looks tough. But I think a lot of people wanted to see Mad Sogaard play a little bit more effectively in the NHL last year. In 6 games, he had a .405 goals against and an .859 save percentage and a 1-3 record. Now, I'll start this off with saying all of the goalies were bad in Ottawa last year. So as a blanket statement, I think it's unfair just to kind of zero in on Mad's numbers and be like, I should have been better. The team was terrible defensively. The goalies were brutal. Like it's not fair to be like he should have been the guy that had good NHL numbers over some of the vets like Korpisalo and Forsberg. So I'm not really putting it on him there, but he's going to have to show another dominant season in the AHL, because I believe next year when he's on that one way, they're hoping to have a Linus Ullmark and Mad Sogaard tandem, and he's going to have to be ready to take on an NHL backup role, and he can't have the kind of stinkers that he had in the NHL like he did this year.
I think that's fair on all accounts, and I think that your expectation for Mad Sogaard should be a top 5 goalie in the AHL. Winning the best goalie in the league shouldn't be out of the question for Mads Sogaard. The way that his trajectory is gone, the way that he can cover so much of the net and his athleticism, it just feels like this has to be the breakout year for him with 40 plus games. 35 is his high right now. And I know NHL call-ups played a huge role in that as well, just being unavailable for the Belleville Sens due to organizational depth and injuries at the top. But man, wouldn't it be nice to see him with a loaded team in front of him? By all accounts, you look around the North Division in the AHL, Belleville has as good a chance as anyone to win that division. This is setting up so well for Mads to take the next step in his development in his 23, 24-year-old season. And I'm looking forward. I think he's got it in him, and that's why I pushed for him to be third on our list of top 10 Sens prospects in the summer of 2024. Number 2, a player who, like Mads, has been on these prospect lists for a long time, and like Mads, is probably graduating after this list. So for the final time as a prospect, it is the K-Train. It is Tyler Clevin. He had a nice full first pro season, split 9 games in Ottawa, a ton more in Belleville. He was asserting himself physically, got into a couple pro fights, and this is all a part of the longer road that a defensive defenseman has to take to get to an everyday NHL role.
Yeah, and I think, Ross, for Tyler Clevin, all you need to do is look at the way management talks about him. Like Steve Stais, glowing reviews, Dave Poulin, glowing reviews, Coach Dave Bell, glowing reviews. Like this guy
Locked on
really
Sens, glowing reviews.
Yes, although I wouldn't count us in Sens management just yet.
No, but hey, we're on the outside looking in, but we know the family's awesome. He's just a salt of the earth guy. I love the clip we got from our interview with Clevin last summer where he goes, I love Ottawa. I love where the rink is. It feels like home. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's home for him for a while here, Ross, because I still believe he is going to be the favorite to take that bottom pair left shot defenseman job. It doesn't seem like the Sens are in a rush to find someone else to do that. Are they possibly going to get a veteran guy? Maybe, but for now, it seems like they're comfortable with Clevin holding that spot, or at least being the favorite to get that spot. And Ross, what I liked about his game in Belleville is we started seeing those big open ice hits. He had a couple of them where we were waiting and waiting for him to do it. We wanted to see it in the NHL, but I think smartly he was like, look, if I go for one of these big hits and miss or take myself out of the play, that's not going to be good for how I look for the coaches. I'm going to play a safer, smarter game. Whereas in Belleville, he got a little more confidence, a little more leeway from the coaches, and he was able to do that. So I want to see Clevin continue to ramp up the physicality because he's able to do that. And that's when his game is at its best, in my opinion. So it's going to be an exciting year for Clevin. And I think he's going to play. Well, I'll get your opinion on this. Does he play more games in Ottawa or Belleville this year?
Ottawa, and I think I say that confidently. Just the way that
Agreed.
He was I shouldn't say mistake-free, but the way he held on to pucks a bit better and made good decisions coming out of his own zone at the NHL level last year in that small sample size, especially on that road trip where we followed them from Winnipeg to Minnesota. I thought that he was just a strong, steady presence, and Ottawa needed more of that on the back end. So I like his odds of playing more in Ottawa. And even like, you look at the point production in Belleville last year, it certainly impressed me. I was expecting it to be closer to 15, and in 60 games between playoffs and regular season, he had 24 points, especially that series against the Marlies. He was dominant. He had 5 shots on goal in the 3 games, a goal, an assist, and just felt like he was controlling the pace of a high leverage, intense game. And that to me is a great sign. And it's not the first time, obviously, he's played in big games. He scored the goal that won them the NCHC, the Penne Rosa in college.
Goal too.
He had some big moments, man. Like he was sold and is a defensive minded guy, but damn, he does have that offensive. It wasn't his first NCAA goal. Didn't he like toe drag and go shelf on Western Michigan? I think he did. And it's just like, he's got these sneaky hands that Brad Schlossman warned us about years ago. And it's awesome this is one of the first prospects, Pilsy, where we've watched, I guess you could probably argue Angus Crookshank would be right there too, where we started the podcast right as they came into the organization, and we've watched a long winding road, not the instant trajectory of a Stützle, not the 2-and right in the NHL of Jake Sanderson. It's been fun watching players like Clevin take a longer development path, but at the same time always feel like they're getting better.
And that's the point of development, Ross. So that's great. Like, you want to have guys in the right situations where, it's tough enough that they're going to have to round and improve their game, but also they're comfortable enough to take those risks and to move forward and to try different things with their game as well. Clevin did that in North Dakota. He did that in Belleville. He's had small opportunities to learn about the NHL game, and I think he's going to continue to improve here. So the development path for Tyler Clevin, I think, has gone exactly to plan.
And the Senators hope that the same type of development can go for their 7th overall pick in this past draft. No surprise that the Senators' top prospect in the summer of 2024 is their newest prospect as well. From the Calgary Hitmen, it's Carter Yakimchuk, the big offensively driven defenseman who can make you pay with physicality as well. So I think that it's a nice crown jewel to add. We knew whoever was picked 7th overall was going to be the Sens' top prospect, but it certainly, now that we're like working our way up the list, it certainly fits the mold of what Ottawa's trying to build.
Yeah, definitely. I think Carter Yakimchuk is going to be like Clevin, Ross. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be so fun to watch progress. And I think this year he's going to absolutely dominate the WHL as if he hasn't already. 30 tucks as a defenseman last year. Is that good? I think so. Hopefully we see the Calgary Hitmen get a little better so he can get some time in the playoffs and kind of have some more meaningful and impactful moments. But this is a guy that can dangle with the best of them, even with the best of forwards. He plays a physical game. He's got a good shot, and he's got a long path in his development process here. So I'm excited about Carter Yakimchuk. Is there other players I think maybe they should have picked instead? Sure. But Yakimchuk is going to be a fun, exciting prospect. And if he pans out the way the Sens are hoping he will, he could be a cornerstone piece of this franchise moving forward, like a right shot defenseman with offensive capabilities and a physical, mean part to his game. Whew, that could be fun.
And it's also the offensive instincts, the way he jumps into the play, the way he literally spins off defenders as though he's Quinn Hughes looking 5'10" out there. He models his game after Evan Bouchard, and you can certainly see a little bit of that in the booming shot from the point, his ability to get pucks through. All things the Senators really struggled at doing last year outside of Jake Sanderson was getting pucks through from the point. It's what the elite defensemen do so well in this league. And even though he is one of the oldest players in this last draft, I agree with you. I think this should not be an expectation that he steps into the lineup on opening night in 2025. I think that it's great that he's in the CHL because unlike the college kids that we talked about earlier, CHL kids, if signed, like he doesn't have a contract right now. As of yet, we're seeing a lot of other guys in the 2024 class with contracts. I guess he doesn't need one to take part in training camp, but I think he does to no, maybe not, because PTO guys playing preseason games. Maybe he doesn't, on second thought, need a contract necessarily beforehand. Maybe you can check into that for me. But overall, with Carter Yakimchuk, I can't wait to see. Like, I don't think he's ready, but it's going to be fun to see him in training camp with NHLers in that first week where it's those split squad games, and we'll see what kind of, what level he's at now, because let's call a spade a spade. The Calgary Hitmen were not a good team. I think it's a 20-team league and 16 make playoffs, and the Calgary Hitmen did not.
Oops.
So I want to see him at least on a good pair at some point next season, and it's going to be his final year of junior because of his early birthday. That gives me a little bit of hope that the Calgary Hitmen want to recoup some picks and we see him move to a contender, because I think he needs to play with good players next year because he has those tools, but I think he should be paired with a smooth skating defenseman that could maybe make up for a couple of those lapses. Because if we're talking about what Carter Yakimchuk needs to work on most, I think that smoothing out his skating would be the number 1, number 2, and number 3 thing I'd look at.
Well, and for me, Ross, the emphasis on the improvement he needs is in the defensive zone. He kind of becomes a puck hound, and he just chases down the puck, which can be effective, but you're often leaving yourself exposed when you do that. So I think that's what he's going to have to work on. And if he can get a more defensively responsible partner, that can allow him to let the ponies run offensively where he can be successful too. I don't know, Ross, I think it might even be a good idea to let him have a full season in the AHL after he's done in the WHL. Like, I don't think that's that crazy. And the one thing with Carter Yakimchuk, you've put so much draft capital in him, you can't afford to rush and ruin his development. So that's where it's going to be interesting to see how this path goes.
And theoretically, if you get what you're hoping to from Tyler Clevin, and even more importantly, as a right shot defenseman, JBD, if he can earn another 2-year contract or whatnot, or you fill in another guy on the right side, you can be patient, hopefully. But it's going to hinge on a little bit of JBD, I think, because if JBD isn't playable by the end of the season, or you want to go in a different direction, I could see management kind of putting in pencil and being like, well, if Yakimchuk could be the guy, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but he is a 7th overall pick. He's a top 10 prospect. I think Wheeler had him in the mid-20s when he just did his overall list, but again, he was a bit lower on him going into the draft, so no surprise there. It's going to be a fun player to watch, though. I agree with you there, and we keep hearing the Brent Burns as a kind of model for how he likes to play. And is there a more fun player than Brent Burns when he was in his prime? I don't know. I also don't think you're going to put Yakimchuk up at forward like Burns did for a bit in his career.
Hopefully not.
but Carter Yakimchuk is the clear-cut number 1 prospect for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, people can get mad at our list, but I don't think that this one is really arguable here.
Let us know in the comments who's too high, who's too low, who did we miss? I know Pilsy texted me this morning, man, we missed on Bourgault not being in the top 10.
I made my argument for it a couple episodes ago, and I think revisiting this, he should have snuck in there somehow, some way. But we haven't really seen him play, so we don't know him that well.
Carter Yakimchuk at number 1, Tyler Clevin at number 2, Mads Sogaard at number 3, Zach Stapchuk at 4, Stephen Halliday rounding out the top 5, and then Jorian Donovan, Marilainen, Pettersson, Boucher, and Eliasson round out the top 10. Pilsy, are you surprised? I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, but that 8 of the Senators' top 10 prospects play for their American Hockey League affiliate?
Nah, I mean, 8 is a lot.
Feels high.
But am I surprised? No, because the Ottawa Senators have traded away so many draft picks, and the drafting hasn't exactly been top tier recently. So a lot of these are from like the 2020 draft that are just still working their way up.
Yeah, it's I don't know if concerning is a fair word to use for this.
No, it's concerning.
But that 3 of these players were drafted in 2020 or earlier. 2 of them being goalies, I will say, though, and they obviously always take a bit longer to develop. The other being Tyler Clevin, who's ready to graduate. So maybe it's not as much of an issue as I initially led on, but it will be nice to have a turnover of sorts in this, and hopefully some other players that we mentioned 2 episodes ago can turn from honorable mentions into legit contenders for the next time we do this, which will be around the All-Star / Four Nations tournament break this season. All right, Pilsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Yes, final thoughts for me is, look, you heard from us how we feel about the Sens prospects, where we rank them, where we got them. Who better to hear from about Sens prospects than Sens prospects on Twitter? Our guy, Henry Brown, is going to join us on Monday. He's going to give us his opinion on how things are looking here. And look, people are getting mad at our list. We love that. Hit us with what you don't like about it, what you like about it, who we missed, who we're too high on, who we're too low on. We're just trying to create some debate here, healthy debate. So let us know how you feel.
And lots of big guests coming up, not only next week, but in the weeks ahead. And we might have to add Mike Rupp to the list, our old friend Mike Rupp, who's been on the show before. At NHL Network just tweets out, the Ottawa Senators need to make the playoffs this season. Rupper believes they do. The quote is, they will make this playoffs or the whole thing will be busted up. The rubber meets the road this year in Ottawa. Strong words, Rupper. We'll be in touch to discuss later this summer. Hope everybody has a safe and enjoyable summer-long weekend. Thanks so much for making us a small part of it. Liking, subscribing, listening, watching, however you engage with the show. We truly do appreciate it. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.